All right, guys, we are live back again with another one. So we got a couple of subjects that we're going to talk about right now as we take a beautiful California morning drive, as we always do, with a cup of coffee and some conversations about mixed martial arts. And not only mixed martial arts, also some YouTube industry jargons that I think would be very important. If you are a content creator yourself, you're going to want to hear this, okay? Because this is very important, especially if you are a reactionary channel. Now, look, here's the thing, right? Before I go on about Tom Aspinall, let me explain something to you guys about the YouTube industry that I think is really important for those that find it interesting or something that is relevant to your life in terms of being a content creator or an aspiring content creator sometime down the road. And it goes like this, okay? So there's always going to be some issues if you are a reactionary channel, okay? Many of these issues are going to come with vague language. Also, language that is not necessarily written in stone or definitive, right? Not definitive in a way where, all right, it's black and white. And oftentimes, you also got to understand that there are billions upon billions of users of YouTube. And then on top of that, there are millions upon millions of content creators around the world for various different subjects and different niches and different interests. But one thing remains is that YouTube cannot possibly hold down all of these particular claims, right? They can't do it by human interaction. And again, this kind of goes into the conversation of, is AI even worth it in the modern age that we are living in, especially where Elon Musk is pushing it. Now you got Donald Trump and the Saudis collaborating with each other to have an AI partnership in terms of garnering as much information as you can in the most efficient way possible. Now, how is it that you are going to be able to do that without, let's say, human interaction? And guess what? That sort of is what happened to me. But I don't want to make that the biggest conversation of this particular topic in the live stream. Obviously, there's a lot more interesting things to talk about, such as Tom Aspinall and why he's wasting his career chasing Jon Jones. And at this point, it's sort of reminiscent that of Michael Chandler. You see, Michael Chandler obviously chased Conor McGregor all throughout this time. He sort of got something very similar to that, but not really, in the form of a Paddy Pimblett fight. Bro is talking alone. King Stans said hi. Yeah, I don't understand what you're trying to get at by saying that, King Stance, or however you pronounce your name. I don't understand what you're trying to get at with that. I don't know if you're trying to like insult me in any kind of way or this and that. But what do you think you're supposed to do on YouTube when you're talking on a live stream? Obviously, there are people that are going to come in here and say something while you're talking literally alone, while you're driving alone, or you're in a studio alone, right? So I don't know what exactly you're trying to get at. I don't know if you're trying to prove a point or you think that you can try and insult me in any kind of way, but just understand that when you come to this channel and you say whatever it is that you want to say, and by the way, I am all about freedom of speech, allowing you to say what you want to say, but rest assured, I'm also going to exercise my freedom of speech by challenging your narratives and your notion, and then we're going to come out and see whose ideas are best in terms of analyzing it by every metric possible. So that's that. So enough about that. Back to Tom Aspinall, how I got a copy strike from Dazn during the Canelo Skull fight, and how I beat it, because I think it's really important for you to understand that. Bro, look up now a spider. Yeah, okay. Shout out to you, my man. Shout out to you. Perofria, is that how you say it? Says hi. Let me know what part of the world you guys are from. We got a little bit more people coming in right now, so this is good. kind of breaks the point of King whatever, King Nothing, whatever your name is, right? But King Nothing or King Stance, however you want to pronounce it, let me know what part of the world you are from. And everybody else around right now, let me know what part of the world you are from, because we are about to embark on an epic journey of this conversation with Tom Aspinall and Ernie. Shout out to Ernie, Kansas City in the house. That's what I'm talking about. Anybody else that wants to proclaim what part of the world they are from, because the one beautiful thing that you get with mixed martial arts, right, is that you have people around the world that are highly interested in the sport, and as a result of that, you really create an interesting community of like-minded people. Morocco, shout outs to Morocco. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah barakatuh to you, my brother. To all my Moroccans, all my North Africans, all my fellow Arabs in the Gulf and elsewhere in the world. Literally from the Gulf all the way to Dearborn, Michigan, right? So shout out to everybody that's locked in right now, and let's get this party started, shall we? So I'm going to be honest with you guys. I honestly think that Tom Aspinall is wasting his career chasing Jon Jones. And you got to understand another thing about this too, right? It's not definitive. None of these things that I'm saying is definitive. We don't have a clear-cut answer as of yet. We don't know if Jon Jones is really retiring or he's really done. Now, look, I want to mention something that he mentioned on a tweet that I think is really important to analyze. You know what Jon Jones said? He said, I'm done. I don't know why the UFC is not telling any of you guys what is going on. And that was very troubling and quite puzzling to me. I'm going to be honest with you. Because on the other hand, it makes you wonder, did Jon Jones literally tell the UFC that he's done? And if so, at what capacity? And also, does the UFC believe him when he says that he's done? And here's the thing. When Khabib did this, nobody believed that Khabib was done. Nobody said, you know what? We believe Khabib, at least not in the UFC staff. They offered him millions upon millions of dollars to get in there and fight somebody else. Maybe fight Charles Oliveira. And if he did, you better rest assured that Charles Oliveira would have never became champion. No way. He would have never became champion if Khabib stayed around. Because obviously you've seen what happened. Charles Oliveira came in there, fought for a vacant title against Michael Chandler, beat Michael Chandler, only for Islam Makhachev to come back and beat him. But can you imagine what kind of money the UFC would have offered Charles Oliveira and Khabib, that type of fight? Could you imagine the magnitude of that fight? Especially the fact that Khabib was coming off of a Conor McGregor win. And then on top of that, he literally has what you would call a homecoming fight against Dustin Poirier in UFC 242, I believe. And then, top that off, he finishes his career against Justin Gaethje and then rides off into the sunset. But can you imagine all the bag and the money that he left behind? All these top 155ers that were there. Look, I think that it was a long time coming, and it was sort of appropriate for him to do so. Think about it like this, right? Eventually, Khabib would have had to move out of the 155 division to make way for Islam Makhachev, right? But yeah, this particular topic is not so much about Islam Makhachev or Khabib, but rather more focused on Tom Aspinall. It's not even so much about Jon Jones, although at this point of Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall's life, one can't be talked about without the other, right? It's kind of like J.D. Vance, the Vice President of the United States, and Donald Trump. You can't talk about one without the other. Well, I think you can talk about Donald Trump and not even know who J.D. Vance is. In fact, there's a lot of people around the world, including Americans in their own country, that don't know who J.D. Vance is, yet he's the #2 most powerful man in the country. But When you do know JD Vance, you can't talk about JD Vance without Donald Trump. That's just the reality of it, right? There's no way around that. It is Donald Trump, and then there's JD Vance. And then there's JD Vance. Of course, you're going to mention Donald Trump. He's going to be in that conversation regardless of anything. And that's just what it is. So, okay. In that light, here's something you guys have to understand, okay? Tom Aspinall needs to go out there and fight other people. He can't be waiting around for Jon Jones. I know that Jon Jones is the bag. I know that he is the moneymaker. He is the bigger name out of everybody in the heavyweight division. He's bigger than everybody. Okay? There's no doubt about that. You can't deny that Jon Jones is the biggest name in the heavyweight division, if not one of the biggest names in the UFC. So as a result of that, Tom can't really fight anybody worthwhile. Also, here's another thing you have to take into serious consideration about Tom Aspinall. If he fights anybody else, he's going to be fighting for an interim title. Like, in other words, if they sign off right now, Cyril Gane, signed. Tom Aspinall, signed. Okay, what are the stakes? Interim title. Is that what he wants? Is that what you want as a fan? No, that's not what you want. Jon Jones is still out there. The UFC is still keeping his name alive. And I think the reason why they are doing that has a lot to do with the fact that they're trying to close in on a TV deal and they want to make it attractive. So how do you make something like that attractive in the eyes of the TV broadcasters? Well, this is what you got to do. As a TV broadcaster, you have to tell them, we got Jon Jones and Tom Aspinall in the horizon. They're going to use that name, even though if the fight never happens. Here's the sick part about this whole thing, right? They have to pretend like as if this fight is actually happening. Because in my mind right now, I know there's plenty of games going on around right now. I know there's a lot of leverage positions that are going on with Jon Jones trying to put himself in the best spot possible to basically keep the UFC hostage in order to garner higher salary in his next negotiation. That's what they're trying to do. That's what Jon Jones is trying to do. Now, is it going to happen? Will the UFC budge? You want me to be honest with you? I don't think the UFC will budge one bit. Not one bit will the UFC budge. You want to know why? I'm going to tell you why the UFC is not going to budge. Because the minute that the UFC starts budging, it's all bad from here. It's all bad because then they have to budge for everyone else. They have to do it now for Conor McGregor, which they have no problem doing that because he is a cash cow. But then they got to do it for the other guys that are coming up. And they want to set precedents. Well, at least the fighters want to set precedents in being able to bully the UFC into getting paid as much money as they think they are worth. The UFC, on the other hand, look, they work like an insurance company. You want to know how an insurance company works? Let's say you get into an accident. The one thing they are motivated of doing is giving you the least amount of money possible. And they all coincide and work with each other because they talk amongst each other. Their agents talk amongst each other. Let's say you get into an accident and then the other person gets into an accident. Who are they going to collaborate with? The insurance company one and then the insurance company B. They're all going to collaborate with each other. Right? So that is their main prerogative, is when they're collaborating, the insurance companies, they want to lowball you as much as possible. And what I'm saying is that the UFC is no different in this regard. But Jon Jones right now, he's in that position right now where he can ask for more money. You want to know why? Because he's been the company man, he's the cash cow, and right now he's the fight that is highly on demand and everybody wants to see. But I want to talk about the reality of this fight. Will this fight actually even break 1 million pay-per-view buys? And I think the UFC is ready to look at that scenario and say, you know what, maybe this is not worth it. That is a possibility, a great possibility that maybe none of this is worth it. It's not worth it to get bullied by Jon Jones. It's not worth it to having to budge to these fighters, setting future precedents in which they can just literally bully the UFC into a corner and make them do whatever they want. That's not what they want to do. What they want to do is remain control and remain a monopoly, but also remain supremacy over the names of the fighters as a single brand. So, in other words, the UFC's whole prerogative is to always be bigger than everybody else. That is their main prerogative. They have to be bigger than everybody else in terms of fighters, right? In other words, the fighter will never be bigger than the brand. And if the fighter somehow gets bigger than the brand, they're going to do something about it. They're going to make sure that they can clamp you down, diminish you, and make you look like something less of yourself. And you know what? We've seen prime examples of this. You want to know the example that we've seen this out of was with Francis Ngannou. Do you guys remember? What did Dana White say about Francis Ngannou on his way out? Francis Ngannou, on his way out, literally said, I'm worth this much. You don't want to pay me this much? I'm out. And you don't want me to go out and box? Why? Simply because Francis Ngannou would have became bigger than the UFC. Now, I know that's not the only reason. Obviously, the other reasons is because if Francis Ngannou was to get knocked out, which he did, it would have made the UFC's brand look bad. But he did very well against Tyson Fury. And the reason for that is because, just like what John Fury said in the recent interviews, it's because Tyson Fury doesn't have a whole lot of muscle behind him. He's got great boxing skills. You can't teach him anything with boxing. But Tyson Fury just did not have the muscles to really compete with Francis. That he has high-level boxing IQ that really carried him over this fight. Now, you get somebody like Anthony Joshua, who is equally skilled as Tyson Fury, maybe just a top-notch lower, but skilled enough. But his athletic ability and his strength level is so right up here that it matched with Francis Ngannou, and then his skills was able to overlap Francis Ngannou on top of his strength, and that is why you got two varying different results from two professional boxers, undisputed and unified champions at that, with Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua, and not being able to put away Francis Ngannou with Tyson Fury, but yet Joshua was able to do that. Ernie says Francis left and Dana claimed Jon Jones was the greatest UFC fighter of all time. He is desperate for Jones to put Tom over. Otherwise, Tom versus Francis is debatable in who is best. That is true. Now, remember, imagine this. They pivoted one direction to another. Think about the pivot here, okay? Francis Ngannou had to be stripped of the title. Just maybe a year after the Cyril Gane fight, or maybe just a couple of months after, right? They had this sunset clause thing going on. They weren't able to sign Francis, but Francis literally left with the belt. So what do? They try to diminish Francis Ngannou as much as they can by using Jon Jones. Now, right now, it is a complete opposite. Right now, it is Tom Aspinall that they're going to use as a way of demoting Jon Jones if he doesn't comply, and then promoting Tom Aspinall as the baddest man in the world. It's the same cycle all over again, because that's what they do. They pit you against each other. They need to do that, because if they don't do that, then there's the aspects of unionizing, and you know how that goes. That's not something that they want, right? They don't want any unions. They don't want any of that. By the way, speaking of unions, I heard that Jake Shields might be coming up on a $500,000 settlement deal from the antitrust lawsuit in the UFC. So that's going to be interesting to see how that comes about. I mean, it's a settlement, right? Maybe a settlement is better than, trying to go through a court system that can probably eat you alive with the type of lawyers that the UFC has on their side. But on any regard, this is the ugliness of the business. This is how all of these things go down. This is the reality of the fight game. But what is Tom Aspinall supposed to do? You want my suggestion? If I was Tom Aspinall's manager, I would say, Tom, listen to me. Make the UFC give you a fight. Okay, say yes to UFC 317. Say yes to UFC 318. Heck, go say yes to UFC 316, and that's literally in a 1 week from now, right? 1 week from now, that's when that is going to start popping off. But against who? Anybody. Who's willing to go in there? Rosenstruck, okay, go in there. Look, I know these are not interesting matchups. But imagine this. 4 or 5 knockouts, 4 or 5 submissions in a row, in my opinion, is better than one Jon Jones fight. Hello, Barbs. Stickman Plus, how you doing, man? Barbs. I don't know what Barbs means, man. You know, is that just, an expression in how you guys greet each other? If so, let me know. But that's a very interesting choice of language that I see you consistently use, and I'm quite intrigued by it. So, yeah, let me know the origins behind, saying Barbs, right? Like, obviously, out here in the West Coast, we say, what's up, homie? That's like the British way of saying hello, mate, right? Or that's the American way of saying hello, mate, is, what's up, homie? At least in the West Coast, right? Where the real G's ride. But yeah, on any regard, where was I going with this? Yeah, so look, 5 wins in a row, knockouts and submissions, are better than one Jon Jones fight. So if Tom Aspinall was to go in a 5 fight winning streak right now, starting from today, right? And that's a lot better than one Jon Jones fight. And let me explain why. Name one fighter in the whole history of combat sports that can do big pay-per-view numbers on his own. Would you say Canelo can do that? Sure. But sometimes he needs a little bit of help, a good dance partner, a good name behind him, to have big names get behind him. Okay, yeah, that's one. But what about Mike Tyson? Mike Tyson literally didn't need anybody. And in fact, the reason why he didn't need anybody was because he had consecutive row after row after row after row of beating people. That's what Tom Aspinall needs to do. He just needs to forget about Jon Jones, because I know that we're speculating right now. We don't have real definitive answers. And anybody who thinks they have a definitive answer, I don't know what to tell you, man. I just think that you don't know what's going on behind the scenes. You're not in Jon Jones's team. I'm certainly not. Do I know guys that have trained in New Albuquerque, in New Mexico and Albuquerque, and all of that? Yes, I know a few guys that have trained with Jon Jones. I know a few guys that have trained with Donald Cerrone, that have trained with Carlos Condit, all those guys in New Mexico in his gym. But the fact of the matter is, if you dig around enough and you ask the right people, none of them know. And that's the God honest truth. Let me read this comments. Yup, you are Barbs. That's kind of just it. Keep it up. Okay, thank you, my man. Thank you. I'm assuming that's a positive sense of reaffirmation. I highly appreciate that, my man. So, Scott Cowie, shout out to Scott Cowie. This is a new name that I see in the chat right now. I think Jon Jones and his team know he's effed against Tom Aspinall after that Stipe fight. I think Jon Jones's team knows that he is effed against Tom Aspinall after that Stipe fight.